The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and Justice Rhody. 489-1240 to get in. 800-825-5865. It is officially day one of the portal for Nebraska fans to hang on tight, and, well, more so than the fans, the coaching staff and guys that are headed off to New York City for December 28th. Who's going to be playing? Who's going to be available? We'll keep you up to date on who's gone, who's here, and we'll dive into it. Tim Verghese with us from inside Nebraska in about 15 minutes. And Rivals, Tim will check in with us, get his thoughts on Keona Davis's departure to the portal. We'll share a thought or two about it. Can also find us and follow us along Hail Varsity YouTube, or you can watch the show, hear us along the Hail Varsity Radio Network, and, of course, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Give that a follow to watch or comment along. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence, at Justice Rhody. So that's hour one. In hour two, Charlie McBride will join us. Kind of a ship without a captain right now, so to speak, Elijah, with no defensive coordinator, no defensive line coach, and you've got guys stepping into the interim. But how does that look as you get ready for bowl prep, as you go court those folks that are also in the portal, because you're going to need to replenish what you do lose for that game against Boston College and beyond. Jay Moore wraps it up with us, as Jay will check in around 5:25, get his thoughts. But, you know, it's interesting here. There's probably a group of six when it comes to bubble wrap. You don't want anything coming in, phone calls, offers, silver-tongued devils, all of the above, talking to guys like Dylan Raiola, Ja'Cory Barney. You've got some guys that right now, so far, so good with the Riley Van Poppels, the Cam Lenharts. But Elijah, Keona Davis is a guy we circled, is a guy we both watched. Minimal snaps this year, but impactful snaps. Great hustle, phenomenal God-given ability with size and weight, and really a nice find that Nebraska was able to kind of get a year ago in the 12th hour from Washington. You got him in the fallout with the Washington coaching change and with DeBoer going to Bama, but he was a guy that was headed to Washington from Tucson, 1.5 sacks, 9 tackles, and a guy that just has all the tools that you were like, okay, whatever the defense is in this bowl game and in 2025, he's a cornerstone guy, and I know that's a bunch to put on a plate, but he has that young ability, or that ability at a young age. If you were going to keep a Cam and Van Poppel, you're just trying to look at what's next.
Well, and that's the big issue with this one is through all of the portal departures in the defensive line last week, you looked and you said, well, I think Nebraska has the three guys they want to be their D-line for the future in Van Poppel, in Cam Lenhart, and Keona Davis. Combined with some rotational experienced guys, Elijah Judy being an example. You could bring in 1 to 2 portal guys as rotational pieces. Like, you felt good about it. Now that's one of your cornerstone pieces on the defensive line. Based on everything we heard from, Matt Rule, the defensive staff last year, the bits and pieces we saw from him.
They raved about him.
He flashed at times in the USC game as well. I know he didn't make a whole bunch of plays, but his athleticism and his ability kind of jumped off the page at you in that game. We went, that guy could be a dude in the future. This is a concerning one, because this is one that, as I was doing math last week with the departures out, it went, well, there's going to be a lot put onto the plate of Keona Davis next season. Now where do you go? The defensive line room looks thin, and hey, it was the guy that you were looking at of like, well, all these departures are going to clear up more playing time for him.
Yeah, well, and let's be honest, it's not. It might clear up by default playing time, but the guy was trending towards kind of earning that playing time.
Yeah. I mean,
because of what you think he can do.
And I just saw him in the same light as Riley Van Poppel of like, man, great to get him redshirted because getting another year of eligibility for him down the road when he's playing at his best is going to be massive. And you saw him get better as the year went on, I think, in the limited snaps he took. And now we'll see what happens to a guy in Keona Davis. But I don't know. I have a feeling we're not going to get many more Emmett Johnsons. And if you're on the phone line, stay there. We'll get to you here in just a second. But as you talked about, it's one of the, I mean, if you list the 6 guys that you want to keep in bubble wrap in the transfer portal.
Keona was one of them.
Raiola is clearly the number one. I know there's been some smoke out there about other teams sending feelers out there. We talked about this last week. That is just a reality of having a former 5-star quarterback in your program that a lot of people think is pretty good. It's a simple reality. This is not the first time I'm sure Raiola has been contacted this period. It's not the last time. I'm sure it's going to happen next offseason after, depending on how long he stays. Like, it's going to continue happening. But that is one. Ja'Cory Barney's a huge one you got to keep around. Sia Wright, I throw into that list. Riley Van Poppel, Keona Davis. And now you've lost one of the guys in Keona Davis that I think was going to be a cornerstone of this football program moving forward.
2 things that are kind of your determining factor, well, really 3 things, depending on the player's perspective. You know, the amount of life-changing money that does exist in NIL. So there is that. What's going to get me to Sundays? Who's going to develop me? What system can I thrive in? My D-line coach, who I really liked, is gone to Florida State. What's the point in sticking around? And I'm just thought bubbling here, some things going through what would be considered, options to stay or to leave. But also winning comes down to it, and that's going to be major. When we talk about Dylan Raiola, right? I mean, he wants to go win football games. He's the man running the offense, and there's a better shot with this new system, with this new offensive coordinator and Dana Holgorsen to have more explosive offenses to get you ready for Sundays, because Dana Holgorsen's proven to be able to do that with multiple quarterbacks over his 13 years as a head coach and then his time as an offensive coordinator at other stops. So the relationship's key. The NIL is important. What's the path to playing time and the path to Sunday, and then being part of a winning program. And right now you're at 6-6 at year 1 for Dylan Raiola, and you want to be doing better than that. So we'll get to the phones here. Who's with us?
We have Steve from Lincoln.
All right, Steve, thanks for calling.
How are you doing, Chris and White? Are you guys doing good?
We're good, man. What do you know?
Good. Two quick comments. One, I would like to once again state how great your radio show is. Highly informative, cutting edge news, great information, great insight. You guys are number one.
Thank you.
Steve, we love you. Appreciate it.
And number 2 is to make a restaurant recommendation for those Husker fans going to the Pinstripe Bowl in New York City.
Okay.
Do I? What's the recommendation?
What I recommend, it's called Knickerbockers. It's right basically in Washington Square Park near it, and they feature the 28-ounce T-bone steak with get this, 28-ounce T-bone steak with choice of fried potatoes or mashed with special cream spinach for the price of $55 roughly before tax. Now, is that not a great deal in New York City for a quality steak dinner?
That sounds like a
good deal
plan.
about anywhere, honestly.
Yeah, 55 bones for a 28-ouncer, a little potato love, and some creamed spinach. Steve-O, thanks for the phone call. Appreciate you. And there we go, Knickerbockers. If you're headed to New York City for the Pinstripe Bowl, put it down. Steve has the recommendation, Elijah.
I'm looking up their menu.
Are you? Yeah. I was going to say Little Italy. I thought he was asking me, and I was like, I have not been to New York. I need to get out more. Let's get our starting 5 shout-outs. Tim Verghese in about 10 minutes.
And can we kick off the starting 5? I've been checking in the comment section here. Arlo Jr. chimes in
yes.
to say Arlo Sr., his father, got to ring the chemotherapy bell today. He
Good
finished
for
up his
you,
last
Arlo
chemotherapy treatment. So shout out to him, pushing through, battling through, kicking cancer's ass. And the comment here, he was happy to be done by the time the show came on today. So.
Well, appreciate you, Arlo and Arlo Sr. Best to you, Arlo Sr., for ringing that bell, brother. The other Dave is in. Coach Brandon is here. Uncle Larry checks in. We'll get to the Scott Frost back to Orlando. Some of you care, some of you don't care, and some of you are intrigued. Where do you kind of fall? And get your comments in on the Stream Hail Varsity YouTube channel on the Frost Factor here. Grateful Red is here. Said, man, I really wanted OU. OU would have meant better bowl game. Grateful Red, I'm with you there, but you kind of get what you get. Jeff Snitley is in, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, and says another one bites the dust. Yeah, we're talking Keona Davis. The other side of this, though, we'll get to more of the comments. NASCAR Eric is here. At least Emmett Johnson is back. That was good news. We were doing the Average Joe Pod Thursday night. You fast forward to last night, and you get the good news on Emmett Johnson returning. That's big time for Nebraska. You're going to probably go get another portal back. You still got Dowdell. You've got other guys in that running back room that may stick or may not. But Emmett Johnson, to me, is a proven commodity. And whatever convinced him to stay, whoever said, hey, man, we like what you do, keep on doing it with that red N on your helmet. I'm glad cooler heads have prevailed, and it sounds like there's some faith in Dana here with what his role can be in the offense. And Emmett's not the type of guy to go in my opinion, and say, what are you going to do for me? How are you going to keep me? How are you going to appease me? No, I think there was probably a frank conversation about what we think you can do, what you've already shown us through 3 games in this system. And listen, you got to play when I took over the offense, right? Imagine this conversation between Dana and Emmett. And you kicked butt in practice, you earned the time, and then you went and performed on Saturdays. As long as that doesn't change on your end, it probably won't change on my end. There's different situational moments, but Emmett's getting a boatload of touches under Dana Holgerson. And you don't know if the grass is truly greener somewhere else. And it wasn't about money, per a deleted tweet from Emmett's dad, I think. So I'm glad for Nebraska that Emmett Johnson returns, because, man, he can have a monster bowl game and a monster season. Montana Husker fan is in. KG, the broken rule, comes in. Says, I will say this much, Nebraska is not a boring team to follow. No, never. Always some drama and lots of built-in drama with the portal. Mike from Cali is in.
That drama factor is why us 3 have a job.
Right.
Hey, Emmett's coming back because he's got to present in class tomorrow. That's why he's back.
Just for you, Justice. I get it. Keaton is here. Says, tell me Raiola isn't leaving, please, fellas. Right now, we're good. And I think it's going to be fine. I don't, good stuff by our friend Avery at Hail Varsity at Hurrdat Sports. Pretty good video coverage down at the Chiefs game last night of Dylan down there checking out Mahomes and company with some of his teammates.
Yeah, with Merritt and Mosey. So yeah,
new guys to throw to.
Well, maybe not Merritt. Maybe that's the big change with Merritt, the ace up their sleeve.
Merritt, can you play D-line as well, and can you do it by the 28th?
Two-way player, get that snap count up.
That's funny.
Get him his Heisman.
Yeah, that's funny. The other Elijah is in.
Oh, but again, as I was saying earlier, just regarding Raiola, get used to the fact that there's going to be teams sniffing around.
Well, it's always going to
Raiola.
happen. And listen, the teams that come to mind that are always in the market for that difference maker at quarterback, A&M, okay? Texas A&M has gobs of oil money. Miami, because they have gone the portal route at quarterback, and it's worked out well. They were the second to last team left out of the college football playoff. Ole Miss, I mean, they have been portal heavy as well. When you look at their addition of Jackson Dart and how well their season went, not well enough. Again, they were on the outside looking in with the portal. But, SEC squads aren't going to apologize for going hunting. And that's just what they do. They'll spend money to do it. You'll come in, and away you go. I mean, those are 3 teams that are real. What do you think of USC as a spot for future quarterbacks? I mean, you can say a lot of things about Lincoln Riley, but Lincoln Riley has done well with quarterbacks in the NFL as long as they stick around for him.
So he always seems to have one.
Yeah, doesn't he?
Yeah, because Miller Moss wasn't necessarily doing it this year, and then Mailata stepped in and came in and I think played a lot better for him. He's always got one. If there is a quarterback whisperer in college football right now, it's probably him.
No, don't disagree with you.
And outside of the fact, Los Angeles, USC, that campus, pretty nice.
Yeah, it's got Elijah's seal of approval. I do have to shout out Junior. It was leaving, getting ready for the afternoon shift here, and on the kitchen island, Junior has been accepted to the University of Nebraska, which I'm proud of him. Good on him. He will keep a long line of Schmidts that have gone on academic probation that first semester. His mama, his papa, I pray not him. Tim Verghese on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody, Tim Verghese with us inside NebraskaRivals.com, and can follow Tim on Twitter at Tim Verghese. Tim, you had the tweet early, and we'll get back to what we were talking about this first segment. And Keona Davis, 1 out of 10 level of surprise for you that he is into the portal.
8 or 9, pretty big surprise.
Wow.
Of the young guys and of the D linemen, I kind of thought he was going to stay intact. I think, when you look at that side of the ball, you look about the young names that you want to keep around. He was up there along with Vincent Shavers, along with Amari Sanders, and Willis McGahee, guys you wanted to keep around. I mean, I tweeted it in the season. Like, I feel like the foundational pieces of this program included him, included Ja'Cory Barney, include Dylan Raiola. So, I'm interested to see how Nebraska pivots. I think that's a recruitment Nebraska can find themselves, back into the same way Emmett Johnson kind of came back. But we'll just have to see, and when I thought about it a little more, maybe not as surprising considering, the defensive line coach obviously he committed to is at Florida State now. He made a late decision to come to Nebraska after being previously committed to 2 West Coast schools or being courted by 2 different West Coast schools. I could see him going back to the West Coast. I could see him following Knighton to Florida State. I could see him sticking at Nebraska. We'll just see what happens.
Yeah, and Tim, as we were talking in the first segment, we had Keona Davis on our list of guys that needed to be in bubble wrap, the guys that couldn't go into the portal because of kind of the cornerstone nature that they are. The guys on the list for us were Dylan Raiola, Ja'Cory Barney, Sierra Wright, Keona Davis, Riley Van Poppel. First off, are we missing anyone? And 2, do you agree with us that's how big of a loss Keona Davis is? Because there's people out there that maybe they didn't notice him in his snaps this season, or they didn't hear from what the coaches had to say about him. And I don't think they considered it a big loss, but I think this one really, really stings.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch him, for sure, you watch him, the way he played this season, you consider the loss of Ty Robinson and Nash Hotmarker, and you look at the bodies in the room and who you had to step up. I mean, Keona and Riley Van Poppel were going to play a whole bunch of snaps next year. Like, they were going to take those Ty and Nash snaps. That was the expectation. And yeah, I mean, I thought he came along strong in the limited snaps he had. That USC game in particular, you see some really good effort plays. Just him kind of dominating a little bit. He's got such a unique build that it makes it tough for offensive linemen to really get hands on him and get leverage under him. And so it's tough. It's a real tough one for sure. I think the other name I would add in there is Amari Sanders, just because I think he's a big vocal leader. I think he's a standout corner. And I think he's a guy that with more snaps is going to play even better.
Tim, a thought here as you look moving forward with Nebraska, the portal transition. What are the steps to kind of win back a portal declaration? I mean, take me through either what you know or suspect. All right, the guy like a Keona Davis is off to the portal. A guy like Emmett Johnson was in the portal and now he's back. How does Nebraska win that recruitment a second time? They did with Emmett. What do you know about that? How do they do it again with Keona?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. I think when you're looking on the defensive side of the ball, for a lot of those guys, it really will come down to who the next defensive line coach is, who the next defensive coordinator is, or at least giving those guys a semblance of an idea of, hey, this is what it's going to be. For some others, it's more of a case of, hey, I'm being tampered with. I have these schools that are in the mix, or I think this is what, agents tell me this is what my value could be, so on and so forth. You enter kind of, and I'm not saying this is happening in Nebraska, but I know this is for sure happening in other places, entering as basically a negotiation tactic of, hey, this is kind of what you're paying me right now. This is how you see my value, but random school, SEC school, thinks my value is this. And then you kind of force the team to adjust accordingly, whether they want to match that, whether they want to give you some assurances, something of that sort, or if they're just fine being like, okay, well, you want to go, go. And so, yeah, you kind of have to balance it. It's situational by situation, like for a Keona Davis, the big thing there is just going to be convincing him that the next defensive line coach and the next defensive coordinator has a plan to develop him and has a plan for his long-term career. That's the big thing there. And again, you might need some NIL as well to do that. That's just kind of the world we're in now. Because, I imagine if and when he officially is in the portal, I don't know if he's officially in there just yet, but when he's in there, he's going to get offers and he's going to get money offered that he may not have even had from Nebraska.
Tim Verghese with us here. And Tim, whenever you talk about those factors, what do you think happened with Emmett Johnson? Announcing he was going to go into the portal, never actually did. He comes back. What do you think happened behind the scenes there to get Emmett back into the boat?
I think there was for sure a conversation with 1890 at some point, but I also think there was a conversation with Dana Holgorsen and Matt Rule about his usage in the offense and what the future of the offense looks like. I think they see him as a guy that, we talk about foundational pieces solely for the 2025 season. That's one of your key playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And I think Dana Holgorsen was able to get through to him on what the long-term plan is for him, how he uses running backs in his offense, kind of what he's going to be able to showcase and kind of just essentially showing him that, Nebraska is the best place for him compared to some of these other schools where, at the end of the day, you're taking a gamble on a completely different situation when you know the situation at Nebraska.
With Dylan Raiola, you have that DEFCON level that's in the back of Nebraska fans' minds, and things look fine. But the portal's a portal that you want to win ball games. Nebraska is 6-6 going into the bowl game, Tim, and how heavy do you think? Tampering might be too strong a word, but how heavy, in your estimation, has it been with some SEC schools really trying to, tap on Dylan's shoulder? How involved has it been, in your estimation, for folks trying to flip him?
It's been a conversation, but that's the problem is that's just that's when you have a recruit of that caliber, you're going to deal with that, and you go and you look at rosters down in Texas, you look at rosters in the SEC where, it's Dylan Raiola and a bunch of other 5-stars, all of those schools are managing those type of conversations right now behind the scenes, and so this has been a thing, behind the scenes for a couple of weeks at this point, whether Dylan is directly involved or not. It's more so on a back channeling type of thing. There's always going to be interest for him, whether he sticks around or not after this year. You're going to deal with this again next offseason. You're going to deal with it the offseason after that. That just is part of having a 5-star recruit on campus who schools across the country recognize what that type of talent is and what he can be. And so, at this point, I think you have to feel somewhat confident that, he's going to stick around just by the fact that he's doing all the right things. He's saying all the right things. He doesn't go to, you don't land Cortez Mills if he doesn't think Dylan Raiola is sticking around, you're not in it late for Michael Terry if you don't think he's sticking around. Ja'Cory Barney isn't dead set on sticking around if Dylan Raiola isn't sticking around. I also don't think Dana Holgorsen's dead set on sticking around for those same reasons. And on top of that, I thought yesterday him being at the Chiefs game with Dawson Merritt with Isaiah Mosey. I thought that was a positive sign, him making it back into the city. But yeah, I mean, again, it's just kind of unfortunately, however you view it, it is part of the reality of the college football world we live in. And I'll say this, to close, at the end of the day, this isn't going to be like a NIL recruitment. This is solely situation. This is solely, what situation puts him in the best situation to potentially win a national championship or potentially just win ball games. I think he's a guy that cares about winning, that cares about, having success in the long term on the field and developing. And Nebraska's checked some of those boxes, but and again, at the end of the day, I think some of the portal, what you're able to do in the portal also hinges on him too. So I think Nebraska would like that situation clarified and cleared up sooner rather than later for that reason.
It's Tim Verghese with us here talking Nebraska's portal entries. And Tim, as we flip it over to guys that are going to be in town this week on portal visits, the guys that Nebraska is going after to reload some of this talent that has been lost, who are some names to follow? I guess the portal only officially opened early this morning, but I am
been working ahead.
I was going to say, I have a feeling with the reality of tampering in college football that it's a situation, if you can't beat them, join them. So who are some guys Nebraska's been having conversations with? Who are some guys that we should keep an eye on as they make some announcements on portal visits this week?
Yeah, I'll have some full list of names of guys we've confirmed have been hearing from Nebraska tomorrow morning, but, because those names are kind of still rolling in here today. The big one, Phoenix Jackson, linebacker from Fresno State. We broke last week. He's going to be making a visit here on the 11th. That's a big one. He's already down to a top 3 or 4. So, I think Nebraska's got a real good shot there. He's a guy that can play inside linebacker, could play some rover, can kind of move around in the back end of the defense. He's one worth keeping an eye on. Dane Key, Kentucky's leading receiver. That's another one worth keeping an eye on. We're working to finalize dates, but we do believe he's going to be visiting here in the next couple of weeks to Nebraska, working on figuring out those set concrete dates. But we believe that's happening. There's been some conversations with CJ Daniels, a wide receiver out of LSU. We'll see what happens there. I think Daniels is assessing. He's going to have some options, and I think he's also assessing where Caden Salter, Liberty's quarterback, his former teammate, is going, because I think those two want to team up again. There's a couple other receivers in the mix. They're talking to a couple other DBs. Name is escaping me right now, but there's a group of 5 corner they're talking to as well right now. That's in the portal. They're working on getting to campus. Yeah, I mean it's just going to be one of those things where these visits are going to get finalized here in the next couple of days. I think by Wednesday you're going to get a more concrete list of maybe 5 to 10 plus guys that could be in town here in the next couple of weeks.
And you said you're going to have that list coming up with your work tomorrow morning, you said?
Yes, on Inside Nebraska.
Any long snappers going to be on that list?
I've not been able to confirm any, but I do believe Nebraska is going to be looking for one there. I think special teams is going to get addressed through the portal.
Wonderful. There's been a loud cheer across Husker Nation. Tim Verghese saying special teams will be addressed this offseason. Inside Nebraska, Tim Verghese, Rivals.com. Tim, we are up against it. I need a little overtime, if that's okay with you.
Yep, of course.
Well, cool. Tim Verghese going to hang out here with us. We'll tackle Bowl Destination with Tim. And I'm quite honestly interested, and we'll hit this right when we come back with him, just what's likely, what's possible to get out of the portal defensive line-wise. We've seen it a little bit on the offensive side with Ben Scott. Portal from Arizona State to Nebraska, played well at center this year for Nebraska. That's on the offensive line. But what are you getting out of that defensive front from the portal? You're getting a guy from somewhere else that probably came in as a super high rated player, 4-star, high 3-star, and it's probably been from a brand program, right? For whatever reason, they're looking elsewhere. What's that production level once they get to their new school? We'll tackle that. Tim Verghese continues with us here on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Tim Verghese inside NebraskaRivals.com, giving us some overtime at Tim Verghese, where you follow him on Twitter. Check out him, Steve Marek, the work they do with their YouTube channel as well. Tim, kind of alluded to it last segment before we stepped away. You're going to need to go to the portal for some defensive line help. You're going to go to the portal for help, period. And you want to make sure those portal acquisitions are hits. You want some consistency. And a lot of times you'll see guys from brand programs that come in with a lot of stars next to their name, and either they were buried on the depth chart, they didn't adjust to college well, they didn't like playing time, whatever. There's 100 reasons. But do you think Nebraska can have a better hit rate, is the best way to put it, when it comes to portal? Because they've got to really access it now versus supplement with it. You're still going to supplement, but it's changed. The developmental theory is great. I just don't know that you're going to be able to keep guys on campus for 3 years to finally go get that starting spot on the lines of scrimmage. You're going to need guys to play sooner, whether it be high school or portal.
Right. And I obviously that this feels like a current situation that will be somewhat changed, when we get revenue sharing contracts, because my full expectation is these guys are going to end up signing multi-year contracts where the money is solely dependent on them being around for 2 to 3 years. Those contracts are going to have those type of limits in there, so you aren't just losing a guy after 1 year. But you're right. When it comes to the portal, you would like to hope Nebraska's hit rate is better and consistent. But you're at the point too where I think this program cannot really especially on the defensive side of the ball, especially where you've lost a ton of talent and you need some instant impact guys. You can't bank on guys that haven't produced yet. You're trying to find guys that have produced. You're trying to find production, guys that have done this at a lower level or at the same level, that are trying to transfer to a new situation, that are either trying to transfer up or transfer to a different situation. One name that's already on the D line we're already tracking is DJ Wesolak. He was originally from Missouri, a 4-star prospect, committed to Missouri, transferred after 1 year to Oregon State, had played sparingly at Oregon State, has some good, solid tape, but statistics aren't there. That's one where it's like, okay, hey, there's some potential there, but he hasn't produced in 2 years of college football. Kind of what do you take? Do you take that kind of guy? What do you promise him? So I'm interested in kind of how Nebraska navigates that, because the other part of this is the trenches is where Nebraska probably needs the most help, offensive and defensive line. Those are also the two positions where you have to spend the most amount of money, and also a position where it's hardest to find guys. Nebraska probably would like to get two tackles two offensive tackles out of the transfer portal. The odds of you landing two starting caliber in the Big Ten, starting caliber level big tackles in the same transfer portal cycle is very slim. It just most teams don't have the resources for that.
Tim, as we kind of discuss the resources and the allocation, we've heard a lot of names offensively from the portal. If Nebraska recalibrates itself and goes young and inexperienced defensively, invests heavily in a Dana Holgorsen-led offense, and transitions to be a team that wins football games 42-38 instead of a football team that wins games.
Speak of this in the Big Ten.
What would your reaction be if that's the direction the program's going to move this offseason?
I don't know if it heads that way. I mean, only because, for me, Matt Rule, every program he's been at, defensive line play and defensive play in general has been sound. Regardless of what happens here with the hire, there's hires out there that would be, promising and could potentially raise the ceiling of this program. There's hires out there that would be a little underwhelming and would probably cause, some backlash from people. But even at the end, I don't think there's a hire Nebraska can make where they're not playing competent defense. I think even with the personnel they have currently and some of the portal swings they'll have to make and some of the additions they'll have to make, at this point, I just kind of trust that Matt Rule is going to be able to find guys that can play at the line of scrimmage, find guys that can run fast in the linebacker room and play, and then find guys in the secondary that can cover. I just kind of trust that he's going to be able to find competent defensive play. At the very worst, I think it's going to be competent.
What do you believe with Nebraska's defensive coordinator spot, Tim, and defensive line coach? Now, a name that we talked about even last Monday was Oakham. who'd been in the NFL. He's at Toledo. That's a name we've had circled just because of his past history and success on the defensive line under Rule. From a coordinator spot, we know Butler's got the audition for the bowl game, but there are other names out there, be it at Syracuse or SMU. What's your feel right now? Phone calls being lobbed outside, or do you think all along it might be an internal elevation?
I think the internal elevation is going to. I mean, Butler specifically, I think is going to get a fair shot at it. That being said, again, I think that would be a bit underwhelming. Whether it's a good or bad hire, I think would be a bit underwhelming. And I think Matt Rule's going to do his due diligence to explore outside. Jim Leonard's another potential candidate. SMU's defensive coordinator is a candidate. Elijah Robinson could be a potential candidate. There's some names out there that, and again, I still think Nebraska, with the resources they provide as a program, with their status in the Big Ten, again, at least for now, having Dylan Raiola on the roster as well, and being in a potential where you have somewhat of a window here in these next couple of years to potentially elevate yourself into a Big Ten championship type contender. I think it's an attractive spot. It really just depends. I think right now, what are they looking for? Are they looking for someone that can come in and bring some people with them the way Tony White and Terrence Knighton are bringing people with them or planning on bringing people with them to Florida State? Are you going to do that? Is that how you replenish some of the outbound talent? Or are you going to go find a guy that can coordinate good defense and knows the X's and O's, surround him with, talented young assistant coaches that can go out and recruit, kind of like what you did with Dana Holgorsen, where you kind of surrounded with young guys that can handle the brunt of the recruiting and brunt of the talent acquisition, and you have the guy at the top that's handling the X's and O's. What
do you believe with Leonard? NFL bound coordinator, does he stay in the pros or does he love college? I mean, Wisconsin, I think you ask Badger fan, they're sick that he didn't get a harder look.
Yeah, he probably should have gotten a harder look. I think he's a guy that deserves a shot. I don't know what his NFL market is right now. Is he a guy that is in line to stick around and potentially move up the ladder at the NFL level? Or is he a guy that could potentially come back down to the college level, work at a coordinator spot and potentially get a bump back up to the NFL? I don't know. I don't know where his head's at right now. And it's another thing of kind of how do they manage their situation too, being midseason and, the two timelines not really aligning. We just saw what UCF did, obviously bringing Scott Frost in midseason when he's with the Rams, but it's a different thing being a offensive analyst essentially versus having, like a position type spot.
Tim, before we get you out of here, we only have about 60 seconds. We did promise this, so we need to get your thoughts on it. New York in December, what are your thoughts?
Man, it's going to be cold, and I understand some people aren't cool with it, but for me personally, when I was growing up, a couple of years we went to up to New York for Christmas when we used to live in out in the East Coast, and so I think New York in Christmas time, maybe it's just my kid brain kind of having the rose-tinted glasses on, but New York around Christmas time is beautiful, and I think you just got to appreciate the vibes, the New Year's vibes, the Christmas vibes. I think it's fun. I think it's going to be a good time, and I think overall, I think people are going to enjoy it.
Now it'll be nice to see Nebraska playing in a bowl game for the first time.
Who plays in it? Who knows? But they'll be playing.
Yeah. Tim's like, don't ask me who's playing, but I know Nebraska will show up. Tim, we'll talk next week. Appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir. Of course, I'll be good.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity, Monday edition. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody. Take us on your time. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Just search Hail Varsity Radio. Give us a rating. Appreciate that feedback, good, bad, or ugly. And, of course, always check out the video pod. That's Hail Varsity YouTube channel. At Herbal Essence for Elijah, at Schmidt_radio. Can follow me on Twitter, at Justice Rhody on Twitter for Justice. Reminder to get buckled up. Driving is a full-time job. Food, phones, friends, they need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. So, like some of the names that Tim Verghese threw out there from a defensive coordinator standpoint. We'll talk to Charlie McBride here in 10 minutes. What does Uncle Charlie want as defensive coordinator? I'm sure he'll weigh in on the portal. And just the bowl game matchup. We haven't spent a whole bunch of time. We'll ask him about this, too, because he was and is close with Coach Frost. And there's a couple of different takes on this. Who cares? Or let's see how Act 2 goes. And I'm curious about it. I mean, I enjoyed keeping an eye on Central Florida the first time he was down there. And it just didn't work out up here, and that's something that Nebraska fans and Frost himself just kind of carry with him. It's too bad it didn't work out because of all he has done here in Lincoln and had done as a player, and you wanted it to work out. It just didn't. Now you have Matt Rule, and we'll see where things go with Coach Rule and where Nebraska's at, trying to launch into year 3, but I'm kind of mildly interested here in how it goes. It's a different world because you have kind of your metros, and I'll say this: you've had your programs that were dominant in the AAC, and Temple was part of that. They were really good, but they're also in a metro location. That's not their fault. It's just reality from a talent pool standpoint. Same with Tim Herman at Houston. He jumped up to Texas and just wasn't winning quick enough, right? And same with Frosty down in Orlando. I mean, had a program that's in Orlando in the state, and there's so much talent down there in Florida that you get a lot of fall through the cracks guys, and that's not a derogatory term. It's just not every kid can go to Florida, Florida State, or Miami. And quite honestly, if those 3 big-name school programs would have had more of Scott Frost's kids on the roster, they'd have a hell of a lot better season in 2017. Okay? So how do you learn as you move forward? You learn through failure a lot of times, and how do you do this second act now in the Big 12? He'll have an offense. He'll probably have a quarterback. Don't know what his staff's going to look like, but it's jumped up. And honestly, if push comes to shove, get an honest moment with him, man. That dude was so torn to leave Orlando for Nebraska. I mean, he felt pretty much obligated to come back to Lincoln and be here. Well, he was living his best life and killing it down there in Florida.
Yeah, so for that reason, I hope he finds happiness. My take is no matter what happens, the reaction of people around here is going to be insufferable. Good, bad, or ugly at UCF, the reaction around here is going to suck. That's the reality of the situation. I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, we'll check in with Coach McBride next. Hour 2 on the way.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody, Game Dog in the chat, Captain in the chat, Ken in the chat. A lot going on here with what needs to happen from a talent acquisition standpoint. We'll dive into it here and talk with Charlie McBride, Mr. Blackshirt, a Monday with Charlie here on Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, we know where Nebraska's going bowling. It's New York City. It's against Boston College. A lot to keep an eye on here as the portal's officially open. How was your weekend? Thanks for the time.
Well, it's pretty nice here, and I don't know if you ever want to go home once you get here, but summertime, it's ugly. I mean, it's worse than the snow. It gets so hot.
Okay, well, that makes sense. You're still doing the thing down in the desert. Happy with you, and I was hoping Nebraska could find their way to Arizona for the bowl game. That was not the case. Didn't win enough bowl games. They were picked for New York City. And talk to me a little bit here. What you make of this setup here on December 28th? What does the game mean? What does the game mean for Nebraska here and Coach Rule moving forward?
Well, one thing is that the time and the place the place is not the thing. It's the time and to get the people to watch the game or go to the game. That's the big thing. And people that are local, get them to go to the game. And that's of course, that's the weather depends on that. And, if it's anything ugly, then, most people won't spend the money. But, I think it's a good thing for Nebraska. I know Bob started there, and they won the game, and it was kind of a good start for them. I mean, they were kind of in a position that was their first year and first bowl game, and it was it was a good deal then because there weren't many bowls. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a new. They may have been the first people that ever played in it.
Mm-hmm. It's Coach Charlie McBride with us here, a Monday with Coach Charlie, part of the Blackshirt Hour. You hear it every single Monday. And, Coach, with this bowl game in particular, Nebraska's facing off against Boston College in New York City. Kind of two reasons why Husker fans, I don't want to say they're unenthused, but they had maybe higher hopes, both in terms of opponent and in terms of destination. You wanted warmer weather and you wanted one of those helmet matchups. Just want to get your thoughts on this in particular. Your bowl destination takes you to a wintry area playing against a team that I don't want to be offensive to Boston College, but they're not a blue blood in college football like some Husker fans were hoping for.
Well, it's the thing is you really want to win the game bad. I mean, no matter what the case is. We went through a streak there that was pretty bad, and so winning the bowl game, once it's over, it's over. But it's a win, and that goes in. Your mind is not who you played or what you played. It's just you won the game. Mm-hmm. And that's really important for recruiting and things like that. And one thing I'll say is it has gotten to be a better game as the years went on. They all do. And the thing that's probably the hardest thing to do is get a place that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And that's usually the best way to go down there that I know would be go to Jersey and you take the 10 to 15-minute ride on the train to go to. Not the train, but the underground or
subway.
Whatever they now. Yeah, the subway over. That's the best way to go, I think. And to get away from all the all the stuff. The train's not the cleanest thing in the world, and you got to watch the pickpockets and hide your money. I'll guarantee you that's
Charlie McBride for the Chamber of Commerce of New York City.
So, but anyway, the game itself is. I think it's a good opponent for the whole game, and they didn't get LSU or the ones some of the ones they'd like to have played. Some of the higher ups. But it's going to be a fun. It'll be a fun deal. I think people go and just being in New York. There's enough things to see, and when you get down in the city and stuff like that, it makes it worthwhile.
Coach, Nebraska has another defensive lineman in the portal today. Keona Davis, kid out of Tucson. That flashed, didn't have a lot of stats, but man was a young player as a freshman that showed some real promise and was one of those guys that you were probably going to pencil in moving forward with the ability he has. Now he's in the portal. We'll see if he stays in the portal or Nebraska can get him back. Emmett Johnson was in the portal. He's now back with Nebraska, but I don't know what to tell you, how that defensive line's going to look for the bowl game if there's going to be any dudes left.
Well, there's some kids there that I think can really develop into good players.
Okay.
And Popwell, and he can be a real good player. He's a good leader, and when he's in there, he's 100%. And that's a start, And one of the things, if they do go to a position coach where they have a guy working with the rush ends, that'll be a big plus because they'll be able to spend more time with him on pass rush abilities and things like that. And it's not so much there because you're on the open side, and a lot of the times. And the thing that happens there is you don't need a 270-pounder. You need a guy that can fly.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And we had guys 200 pounds. We had 195, 200-pound guys. They learned to play the run. And they were good at it after a while, and so it's a position that it really needs a guy now. The guy that's the defensive line coach can really spend a lot of time with those two guys inside. They can get to be much better players.
Well, and with your setup, you took care of the defensive line, but you also had a rush-in coach, didn't you?
Yeah, Tony Samuel was our rush-in coach.
He's pretty good.
He played here, and he knew the lay of the land and everything, and he's a good recruiter and a good guy to have around. I was a little different maybe as some of the defensive coordinators. I believe that 4 heads were better than 1.
Yeah.
So if you're the kind of guy that wants to go tell everybody how to do it, what to do, you're going to get your butt kicked. And because some of those guys have some good ideas, and some of those guys were able to work at positions. In other words, Tony handled all the outside runs. So, if they had a tendency to go outside, in a down and distance, he'd know that he'd better than me. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of things that each guy had a position. And because Craig Bowl or Evan Steele, I think, were handling handled special teams, plus coach and linebackers, and and I handled the inside run, but so did the linebacker coach a little bit. And that we used their press box quite a bit. Frank was up there, and he could help Milt and Tom. So it was set up. George was up there, had the passing game. He could see what was going on, and it worked out good for us. And that's what probably our organization and our ability to make quick adjustments was probably the biggest thing we had.
Coach, I want to ask you here real quick. Justin's going to jump in too, but what does Nebraska need? What's the next act need to be following Tony White, because Nebraska's got to get a D coordinator? Well, the first thing you do is you have to have a good person and a guy that can teach you. You can't go in with a guy if a guy's let's say an ego man and everything's about what he does and he does it right and he's got this experience. That doesn't work. You got to be willing to all get all together and find out what is the best thing, and that's what to do. Even if it's an older, if you hire an older guy and some younger guys, you learn from them. I learned from high school coaches, for Pete's sake, a lot of this stuff. I always listened and paid attention. Didn't make yourself a big deal, around. You're the man, everything. You're going to get stoned. Mm-hmm. And because you're going to be the guy they come to every 2 minutes, to find out what's going on, and that gets old. Mm-hmm. You got everybody bugging you. So I never believed in, I thought a defensive coordinator was a guy that can control the whole thing overall. And we had something that was different. I don't know what they're doing now, but our game plan was, in our way we set the statistics of what they did on down and distance yardage and so forth was A and B. Mm-hmm. A was ahead when they're ahead, and B was when they're behind, because they're going to run different things in those situations. So it really did help to have if we were even, we were 0-0, we were ahead. But other than that, you were ahead or behind, and you're using that
game plan or that, those statistics on down and distance and how to call your plays. And we had defenses prepared for those particular defenses, for down and distance and things like that.
Coach,
so, it all depends on how they want to run it.
Coach, I wanted to go back to the bowl preparation. I know you prepared for a lot of national championships. You guys had a great bowl streak from 1981 to 1997. Can you talk me through your bowl preparation? What were your points of emphasis, and what were you focusing on leading up to that?
The worst thing we did was we practiced in the afternoon. The reason for that being is we get them up a little bit later. We'd have a brunch, and then we'd have a meeting, and then by 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, we'd get on the bus. By 1:30 or 2, we'd get over there and have practice till 3:30 or 4. Get back to the hotel and rush like heck to get to whatever they had planned for us that night. And the players were locked. They hardly got to if we went to the beach or something like that, they hardly got there. I mean, because we had their attention all the time. Now the last 5-6 years, we had practices early in the day, and they had the whole afternoon off, and they played much better. But by having it earlier in the day, you know what that does? That makes them get to bed earlier. And if you have to go and have the thing, and the guys will be out late at night. At least the first 4 or 5 days, you kind of let them. They don't have a curfew. Most everybody does that if they're down there. But we were down there probably a week and a half or so.
Charlie, outside of the game, what's the coolest thing you got to experience on a bowl trip?
Well, I don't know the players to tell you that, but all the different things you have, that different. Sometimes the coaches have. Go a different way. One year we went on a big cabin cruiser with somebody at night and went and saw the lights and the stuff like that, and it was pretty a nice thing. And it was the people that owned the newspaper in town had the boat. And then there's usually stuff for their kids to do, parties, and sometimes women are involved and the girls are invited, and they have different things, but some of them went fishing, didn't go anywhere. They did stay around and fish off the shore, or they, one hotel had a place that came in that was, kind of an inlet that they fished out of, and they did that when they were free time all the time. The guys were real good fishermen, but I think as a rule, you can't. It's hard for me to tell what they like. We have every time we have a bowl game, we have a big party at the night, and it's usually with the other team. So you get to meet some guys, and you get to meet the other coaches real good and talk, spend time with them, and you can sit down and eat with them. You could, it's a pretty good deal. So that was a big thing. And then they had something where they took us to and we aquarium, say for example, and it sounds like they just go to an aquarium, but we had a lot of fun. They had a program planned, and then we might go somewhere afterwards and do something, or they were free or whatever it is. But most of the bowl people are very good. They had a room for the border regions and the coaches and some of the people that were there, which was private upstairs, and you could go up there, and some people have drink and sit there and talk, and it was kind of nice.
A little relaxing before the main event. Coach, right. We'll holler next week and see how things look portal wise and beyond here as we get ready for the bowl game coming up here the 28th. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Okay, thanks for having me. I'll see you guys. And who's going to the bowl game? Any of you?
Not yet. We're working on that.
That's a secret, right?
That's a secret. You take care, Coach.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye now.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. Blackshirt Hour continues. Jay Moore with us. Big Red wrap-up. Husker standout NFL man at JMoore44 on Twitter. Bird, you got some golf in. I'm happy for you. It sounds like you scored better than I did. And you're like, well, duh. I don't suck.
Yeah, I got out and hit some balls on Saturday afternoon, so that was good. And then, pegged it on Sunday afternoon as well with some pals of mine and chased around for a few hours for probably the last round of 2024. So we'll always take golf in December. We've actually been pretty spoiled to play as much golf we've had in November and December. I mean, I think last year I played in December, damn near right up until Christmas. Mm. So if it's going to be 40 and sunny and no wind, you can play golf in Nebraska if it's in those conditions for sure.
I love it. Well, a lot going on with the portal. It's officially day one of the portal. The final day is Nebraska's bowl day against Boston College in New York City. We'll get your thoughts on all of that. But, one of the names Nebraska fans and even us that have covered the team that have been weary and worryful about was Keona Davis. That announcement coming down today. And a kid out of Tucson that had some major looks. Nebraska got late last year, Jay, and you saw some glimpses, 1.5 sacks, 9 tackles, but the guy's body type and ability, I mean, he's a play early guy that is now testing the portal. It's getting super thin, man, on the defensive line with some of these departures.
Yeah, I saw that this afternoon about Keona's decision to leave. Yeah, he's a talent. That's one that he has a lot of God-given attributes that you can't develop. His ability for his size, athleticism. The guy has extremely long arms, long levers, and that's what you want as a defensive lineman. And he made some plays this year, but obviously very, very raw. Mm-hmm. But in another year, 2 years, the guy has all the tools to become a Sunday guy. So obviously, when you lose young players like that, that hurts. But I don't know. I think obviously we've seen a lot of D-line guys with Jamari, Keona. If you want to put Princewell in there, mm-hmm. That have left. It's gonna happen, and obviously not surprised when your D-line coach has already left and is going to Florida State with Tony White. So I'm sure there's been some potential discussions there, and that's just the nature of the beast when that happens. I'm not saying it's Terrence Knight and that's bad on him, but I mean, you're kind of out there, chit-chat, and you've developed relationships with your players at different places, and you test the waters a little bit. I don't know what Florida State has. I'm sure the cupboard's not bare there, even though the record may say differently. But I think they have a lot of talent down in Tallahassee. But, yeah, it's always – you don't want to lose players that – especially young ones that have a tremendous upside, and he definitely has a lot of upside. But this is what it is. If you are – I want guys that are firmly committed. I get it. You're going to get people that are poking around, talking to you, throwing out potential dollars. But I want guys who want to be at Nebraska. I want guys who want to play here, get developed here, get back to the winning ways. You're committed to a school, maybe not necessarily a coach. And if you have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, it's hard to get to where you want to go if you're kind of always looking around the corner to see what else is out there. If you're always kind of thinking about the grass is greener. So I don't blame guys. Listen, this is uncharted territory for everybody. When you get people knocking on your door saying, hey, we have this money that you could potentially have if you come here, tampering or whatever. I don't know the rules with it, but it's just going to happen. It's the wild, wild west right now until you kind of get things cleared up with the revenue sharing and potential, 2 or 3 year contracts. It's just going to be crazy, and you're going to have guys leave. But the nice thing is, you can go out and get guys too. Guys are going to leave other schools. You can go grab them. But if guys want to leave, go test the waters, see what it is. Listen, from a guy that made decisions, and obviously not in college because my playing days are vastly different than what they're dealing with now. But, I had been a free agent in the NFL before, and had been at a place that they weren't very good. I think we had 2 or 3 wins the year I was there. And I was a 1-year deal there and left to go somewhere else when the team I was with previously, they wanted to re-sign me. And I had an opportunity to come back next year and not necessarily a day, a first team starter, but I had a spot on special teams. Special teams coach loved me. And I went somewhere else, and then I was cut, before camp even started. And I thought it was a better opportunity. But sometimes you got to realize where you're at might be the best situation to where you can kind of develop and grow, and you might not get the money. And I didn't get any upfront crazy, type of contract by any means, but sometimes you got to realize where you're at may be the best position for you long term. And we get so caught up in short term and get so nearsighted on things, especially when money's involved, that you kind of lose sight of what's important. And from a development standpoint, that your judgment can be clouded quite a bit. And I think that's happening a lot just across college football in general, because you're 18, 19, 20 years old and you're having 6-figure numbers thrown at you, and you might not come from money. And it's you can change a lot and rather quick. And I can't blame them for making some of these financial decisions. But sometimes if you have a good head on your shoulders and the right family at home, and I guess guys have agents now in college and they're kind of talking you through some of this stuff, the right conversations need to be had, and the players, the benefit of the player needs to be looked at first to see what long-term growth is and potential for that player to continue to either stay or leave. If he stays at the school, what money can you make while you're there from NIL revenue sharing? And then ultimately, can you be developed into an NFL player to where you go make the big time dollars long-term? So there's a lot going on. It's never fun to have players from your school get plucked and leave, but it's gonna happen everywhere. And like Coach Rule said, you have good players, they're gonna get people are gonna want to come snag them. But we got to replace them. We got to go find some other guys in the portal, and we got to recruit. And you got to fill some shoes, because we've had some good players leave, and it's unfortunate, but it's just the name of the game now.
It's Jay Moore with us here. And Jay, there's been a serious flare on guys from Nebraska's front 7 entering the portal. I mean, we see it today with Keona Davis, but that's kind of been the trend through the past week, if you will, that it's been a lot of guys from the linebacking core and from that defensive line core. You talk about the fact that Nebraska's probably going to need to bring some guys in through the transfer portal. Do you think front 7 is a place where plug and play can work in college football, in that, I mean, when you look at offensive line, there's so much importance to having guys that play next to each other for a while, building that chemistry, building that continuity. Is it the same story with your defensive line, your front 7, or can you just plug and play guys that have all been brought in from different places and expect them to play well together early?
I think it's easier to do that on the offensive line, because for the most part, I think secondary wise, it's easier to plug and play guys in the secondary, and that's probably why your secondary and offensive linemen are a lot of times your toughest gets in the portal. I think defensively, your D-line linebacker guys, those are by far game changers, but I don't know if they're necessarily plug and play situations, just because of scheme has so much to do with what you're doing and to fit. Can you go grab a 4-3 guy and just throw them into a 3-3-5 or a 3-4? Some guys get so used to playing, if you're a defensive end playing in a 4-3 and you're playing a 5 technique, which is outside the tackle, or a 6 technique, which is head up on the tight end, all of a sudden you're asked to play a defensive end in a 3-4, where you might have to play a 4-eye, which is more inside on the tackle, a 3 technique, which is a shade on the outside of the guard. That's vastly different. That is completely different. And I've had to do it, and it's an absolute complete game changer for guys. It gets you way out of your comfort zone. So I think you have to be very cognizant of how and who you're going to try to go and get. Do they fit into your scheme? Now I think a 3-3-4 guy or a 3-4 guy is going to fit better into a 3-3-5. 4-3 guys are going to fit better into another 4-3 defense, whether you're playing an over or under front. Linebackers wise, I'd say linebackers wise, a little easier to fill. Plug and play wise, you do have to understand, who's in front of you. I think I think it's a little easier of a transition, but I think D-line wise, it's probably one of the most difficult spots to probably plug and play, just depending on your system. And I think if you have equal systems, not that it's pretty easy. But if you're trying to tweak and do things differently than what you had a guy doing, that's hard. I think there's a learning curve there, and I think there's some development things that obviously the nice thing is you have a spring ball to work with the guy and obviously fall camp. But I don't think you're gonna say, hey, yeah, we can just go get any defensive end, defensive tackle, and just put him in our system, and he's going to continue to do the same things. I think it's very, very system based.
Jay Moore's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Blackshirt Hour at JMoore44. Jay, how much would winning have helped? Maybe you lose Knighton, maybe you lose White, but if you're a couple games better or things go a little differently, Bud, would that maybe have put the brakes on some of these departures?
I don't know. I think these departures we've seen from these front seven guys is, I think, heavily based on Coach Knight and Tony White leaving. Mm-hmm. So even if we maybe won against Iowa and got 7-5 or even 8-4, I don't know, because I think for what Tony had to do with the family, I don't know if we went 8-4, I think from a family perspective, I think he's probably still going. Yeah. And that probably means Terrence Knighton's leaving as well. And that probably means you might have some other departures that we've seen to follow Tony or Terrence, whatever they're trying to rationalize their thinking to enter the portal. So I don't think so. If the majority has been on with the defensive line, I think unfortunately the situation Tony was in, I think this was going to happen no matter what. So I think I don't know. I don't think so. I would have loved to. It'd been great if we're 7-5, 8-4, 9-3, and we're have definitely maybe a different outlook. But I don't know if it drastically changes, Chris. I just don't. I still think we're kind of in a similar situation just because of. And we've had this discussion before. Do you commit to playing for a school or you commit to playing for a coach? And I see both sides of it. And I think some guys, you do. You coaches are like a father figure. It's like a parent, and you want to follow them and be under their tutelage. And or if someone else is, they leave and you don't know exactly who else is coming in, like in Nebraska situation, that can be hard, and you want to. Maybe get ahead of it a little bit, but I don't know if it's drastically different if they have, 2 to 3 more wins.
It's Jay Moore with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, talking the week that's been, the week we're looking at as it stands. And Jay, with the portal officially open, take me through your Nebraska football portal wish list, if you don't mind. Obviously, a lot of cutting still has to happen, but what do you look at on this Nebraska roster, what you saw this past season? What do you think Nebraska needs an instant influx of talent at?
Yeah, I think I'm always going to look at offensive and defensive lines because that's the most important. Those are two most important positions in football. So you always want to solidify, get depth there. I think offensive line-wise, they have some good young depth behind and guys who got thrown into positions to play this year because of injury and done a really good job. Gunnar Gatula, Henry Lutovsky, some guys that got thrown in there. I thought they played their butts off. So I feel better about the O-line, and I think probably maybe the D-line as of right now. I know Riley Van Poppel is going to have earned another red shirt. Obviously losing Keona, it wasn't great. So there's going to be some guys you're losing Nash and Ty, so you're going to replace some guys. But I think overall, where I think Nebraska is lacking offensively and defensively. We need more speed. I think the offense needs more big play threats. You need guys with the extra twitchiness in them that you get the ball to them in space and they can create stuff and go. We've had some bigger possession guys from the tight end and wide receiver aspect. You can go up and they can go get the 50-50 ball, but they're not really stretching the defense, and you can't really throw them a go route, and you just get up, the ball's in the air and they can go get it. I think Nebraska needs to find some more of those guys. From the linebacker perspective too, getting some more speed there is going to help. You got to have erasers on defense. You're going to have mistakes that get made defensively. It's just part of the game. And if you have speed, you can make up for a lot of mistakes rather quickly. So just overall, and I think that's on everyone's from wish list. You're always trying to get more athletic, more speed, more playmakers. But I feel better about where the offensive line is heading into next year. Obviously, heading to the bowl game, defensive line's got to replace some guys and young guys who we haven't seen much of. But there's some guys still that are younger players here. I think that can develop and help fill. But I think the task is much bigger for the defensive line than offensive line headed into 2025.
Jay, gonna switch down to Scott Frost, and some Husker fans are going to watch and cheer from afar. Some don't care. Some are wondering how Act 2 goes at Central Florida. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. Obviously, the success he had there for those couple of years before he came up here in 2018. I mean, I'm not. Listen, I'm happy for him that he found a spot. I think the game has changed a little bit since he's left Nebraska, just with NIL and all this revenue sharing stuff. I mean, I know he's aware of it and is going to have a team of guys to help him get through all this. To be honest, I thought he might take more of the NFL route. I thought that might fit him better, just because you got to. Being a college coach now is, I don't know if I'd call it. It's not a nightmare, but it's a lot to deal with. I mean, can you only imagine just with portal, recruiting, NIL, revenue sharing, just the roster management. Getting down to 105 guys. You don't have to deal with all this in the NFL. You have 53 guys, and you got your scouting team and your general managers and all these guys that kind of deal with this stuff, and you just try to field the best 53-man team you can. And if you don't, then you can go cut guys and sign different guys. It just seems a lot easier. But obviously that UCF and Orlando holds a special place in his heart, and I wish him the best. I hope he goes down there and successful in the Big 12 in that conference and gets. I mean, they're not that far off. I mean, UCF is always going to have talent. One of the largest enrollments in the country, and then the state of Florida in general. I mean, there's just talent galore down there. So he'll get that thing back to probably where it was when he was there. And I'm happy for him, and I'm happy the situation fits well for him and his family, and he can go be the best version of Scott Frost that he can be. And that's at Central Florida. And so I'm happy he got another opportunity to go do his thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if that thing's in a couple more years as they're fighting for a playoff spot.
Jay, we'll wrap with this. Just a takeaway with the Bad Boy Mower. Is that what it's called? The Pinstripe Bowl.
The Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl.
Thank you. Or the worst turf in America to kick off on a frigid New York Saturday morning.
But that's because of the weather, not because of the mowers. Clearly.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So are you going to gripe about it? You're going to watch. You're going to have a Coors. I know you will. But anticlimactic or not so much? Where are you at here with the old vibe?
No, it's a great opportunity. I think the fan base would have liked to have gone somewhere south of the Mason-Dixon line, right, and get somewhere warmer, but it's not the case. This is the opportunity that was presented, and you better go make the most of it. That's the best part about these bowl games. You can kind of see what team really has the right mindset to make the most of it, or who's kind of pouting and doesn't really want to be there. So both teams are in a unique situation because Boston College, they got us off to a heck of a start. Finished. They had a kind of a low like Nebraska did, and finished 7-5. And but I've seen they've had some portal guys already on offense. But this is I've foreseen Nebraska having all the details going to be there. Everyone that's playing is going to want to be there. Listen, you should want to be there. You haven't been in one of these things in 7 years. There should be zero gripes, zero complaining. If you didn't like it, then you should have played better, right? So I'm happy. But I'm excited to watch it. 11 a.m. on a Saturday, on a few days after Christmas. Sign me up. Let's do it. And I'm excited to watch them play Boston College, Bill O'Brien in Yankee Stadium. I mean,
they may call you. I mean, they are thin at the D line.
Oh my gosh, I could give them about 2 plays. That's about it. And those 2 plays better be about a quarterback sneak. That's all I can handle. But no, it's gonna be. Listen, it's gonna be fun. I know the fan base is a little upset. They're not going somewhere warmer. But listen, it's another opportunity. The biggest thing you have 13, 14 other practices, develop and get better, and you're able to develop more with Holgerson and getting his system in there. And you're about some younger guys that have made the decision to stick around for now. Obviously, the portal just opened up and guys can leave. But I want to see the kids who are here and the kids who are coming back next year and get their opportunity to play and develop and make the most of it, because that's what the bowl season is. It's an exhibition, but I tell you what, those are some of the funnest times I had being at bowl games, Alamo Bowls, Cotton Bowls, even Shreveport, Louisiana, and then Penn's Bowl. They're all fun. You get to enjoy, get some fun time to hang out with your pals and your teammates away from Lincoln. So get up to New York City, enjoy it, and go get a win.
Yeah.
Finish 7-6 and get the momentum going into 2025.
Bird will holler next Monday. Appreciate your insight as always, dude.
Yep, you got her.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Always get the podcast of Hail Varsity Radio. Search for it, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and take care of us too. Like and subscribe Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody. Thanks for hanging out on Monday. Jay Moore, awesome stuff. Charlie McBride, fantastic. Appreciate him. And of course, Tim Verghese. A couple of segments with Tim on the portal targets. And, the Keona Davis situation for Nebraska. Can they get him back in? Time will tell. We shall see with that. The Sexy Grinch, formerly Crew, is back. Should I wait for you to show? Hold on a minute.
To get his lift going.
Yeah. No, I'm headed there, Crew. It's been, brother, I have not lifted or done any training. And I always kind of would do a full body, my old man, full body anyway. And long and short, partner, it's been since I busted my ankle.
Oh.
So that's July. So I am absolutely brutally, I've been too long away from the weights. I've treadmilled it from time to time with my Rucker vest. But I need to get back into the lifting.
Well, if you want an easy way to ease yourself in, lifting with Crew is probably the right way. Go leg day with Crew, and that should...
Are you calling him out?
No.
Oh, the leg day you might be. Crew's going to roll up with the ripped Iowa shirt on the side, showing off the ab work and the biceps, and will make me feel puny.
Oh, but those...
I tried to do a couple push-ups the other day, and it was just not good. That's so horrible.
Crew's in the sad face emoji.
So, what are we doing tonight? We doing a steak and a beer?
We can.
Yeah, Dallas and Cincy. Come on down. Uncle Andy's got his Dallas gear on.
This is a game that preseason was a lot better than the game we have now.
Oh, for sure.
Cincinnati's 4.5-point favorites.
I feel bad. I like Zach Taylor a lot. We love Zach Taylor. Burrow's had a hell of a year. They just haven't won. Defensive coordinator went off to coach with Coach Prime.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's been a nightmare.
They've had to throw the ball 50 times a game, so that probably helps Joe Burrow a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and they were too cheap to sign Mixon. You keep Mixon or someone that's worth a damn at running back there, and that's been Cincy's formula. First down run, some play action. You get Chase going. I don't know.
Go get Ashton Genty in the first round this year.
Or Quinshon Judkins in the second.
Ooh, that might be a better play.
Good
Keep
work.
him in Ohio.
Where are we going here? Are we going Cincy or Dallas?
Might be going with a movie at my house tonight. That's kind of a gross.
You have no interest.
I would err on the side of Dallas to cover, Cincy to win.
Okay, that's fair. Over-under's right at 50.
We going over-under?
We going 28-24-ish, something like that.
It's kind of what I'm feeling, yes. Yeah. Somewhere in that range.
Okay. No, I mean,
I would lean towards
Cincinnati's just given up 30 spots all season long, even to this backup quarterback.
It's not good for fourth all-time in Nebraska passing, Zach Taylor.
No, where we going? Are we passing, respectively? No one cares? No stake in a beer bet?
Justice?
I think we respectively pass this one.
Okay.
This game kind of blows chunks.
Okay.
This is like Coach Barney with which was it, the AAC championship last week?
Next. Tomorrow, we'll check in with Matt Verzel, Brunsey. Mitch Sherman joins us. Thanks.